Breaking it down in layman's terms, today I've got a dynamic, wonderful guest who I've known online virtually for about a decade and some change. I've got Julie Hansen. Now, she's a sales leader. She's been an actress, still probably acts. She performs sales trains, virtual hybrid events, a whole lot more. And she's written 3 books. Her latest book, Look Me in the Eye, which we're really going to unpack today. Julie, welcome in layman's terms.
Oh, thank you, Doug. This is long overdue, so I'm happy to be here with you.
You got that right. We did our first virtual call a few months ago after I read the
Mhm.
book. So go to Amazon, I'm plugging it, do a review, get the book. We can just cover that right now.
All right.
Great book. But I've followed you online through LinkedIn, through a lot of mutual networking groups. So there's a sales experts channel, women sales pros.
Mhm.
People, you got to check out what Julie's putting down on LinkedIn and her website and all her courses because she's a pioneer and innovator when it comes to presentation styles. But your latest book really honed in on, well, we're living in that virtual world more ways than one. So what inspired you to write Look Me in the Eye?
Oh gosh, it was really out of necessity, right? So, like you said, I've been teaching presentation skills, communication skills for sales teams for years, and I used to talk to people who sold remotely and say, "Okay, you need to use the power of the camera." And back before the pandemic, most people's reaction was like, "Oh no, I don't turn my camera on. In fact, I have tape over my camera in case it might accidentally turn on." So it was not well received. But when the pandemic struck, I saw everyone rushing in with, getting all the tools and the technology. You got Zoom, you got Teams, you got the right mic, but nobody understood the art, I guess, the craft of really talking to a camera or realizing that we were in a new medium. And it reminded me of when I was in acting, and like most actors, I started out in theater, and I did that for several years. And then when I had an opportunity to audition for a little role in a TV show, I went in and I didn't do anything different. And it was the most awkward audition you've ever seen. I didn't know where to look. I didn't know what to do with my hands. The other person I was supposed to be talking to wasn't there. I'm just talking to a camera. Needless to say, I did not get that part.
Right. But the
Uh,
experience you learned a
the
lot from that
I
experience.
learned, and I yeah, and I learned that actors, they're not naturally good at this either. They take on-camera classes to learn how to speak naturally, to adapt for what is really essentially a new medium. And we treat it in business like it's just, oh, I'm just going to slip over here and do everything I did in person on the camera. And that's not effective. And so I put together the Selling on Video Masterclass with some videos to help people understand how to look at the camera, how we need to adapt our body language, and then out of that, the book was born with a lot of the more detailed how-to and tactics on communicating on camera.
Well, I love the book. As you know,
Thank
I've said
you.
I did the review, and it's more than just look me in the eye. There's so many things going on, so many layers, and obviously it's a time of need. You mentioned that back in the day when you did your audition, it was a learning experience, and now people are going through the learning experience for the last couple of years, face dab in the pandemic, being able to do more virtual calls, and I think even quoted in your book, you said that Gartner stated that 80% of B2B sales calls are going to be done virtually. And if that's not a wake up call, then what is? I mean, we're not going back with this. These are
Right, right.
skills. These are skills, soft skills, hard skills. They are skills that we definitely need to improve on.
Yeah, and we need to be able to really develop that muscle memory so we can adapt to being live and we can adapt to being in person, virtual. And right now, people are really just sort of reinforcing some behaviors that aren't working that they adopted over the pandemic, and not realizing that they're not they're not communicating at their highest potential, and they can be missing deals that they could have won simply because they're not forming that connection, that relationship with the other person, that customer on the other side of the camera.
Well, two things. What I like what you said in that answer. You said first of all, building those relationships with your clients and customers is more than just having that presentation. Is building those
Right.
relationships, and we're going to get into that more. And that's really outlined through the book. But you also talked about muscle memory and getting your reps in, getting your practice. Whether you're doing an audition for an acting role after you do 2 or 3 auditions. You probably got better at it after you did more than one video take. But you even go back to when you were training, when you teach people the demo phase of sales. This is not virtual. This is anything. Anything with practice comes time. And I find that truly fascinating because one of the takeaways I got out of the book, here's the point I'm going to try to make here, is I read about the part is, okay, I'm so used to talking directly to the camera at my audience, but being able to read what the camera sees, being able to pick up non-verbally, is Julie listening to me now? Is she
Mm.
looking away? Or if I'm doing a one to many. And I found that truly fascinating. There's so many dichotomies on that.
Yeah, the camera is, we have to understand how to use the camera for different, different scenarios. Like you said, if you're talking to one person, if you're talking to a group, if you need to read body language, how do we do that and stay connected with them with our eye contact through the camera? So it's much like, when you first learn to drive a car, right?
Mhm.
You've got to, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I got to, I got to start this. I got to look at these controls. I got to look out the rear view window, mirror, and all these things that you have to do to manage and hit the gas and all this stuff. And it seems sort of overwhelming, right? It's like, when do you do what? And now, you just do it without thinking about it. You develop that muscle memory. And it's the same with being on video. But if you don't have a good practice, if you don't have a good system of when you look at the camera, when you look at the audience, how you manage that eye contact and that connection with your audience, you just end up being all over trying to cover all your bases. And then you look shifty-eyed and
Right.
untrustworthy, and that's not something we want to communicate in sales, right?
Yeah, and it's with the camera now, we're gonna just gonna hone in on the virtual component, whether it's one to one or even one to many, whether it's a Zoom call
Mhm.
or you're talking directly to me. You use the phrase, I want to say chapter 3, or it's in the book, cheating the camera, because the camera sees what the camera sees. And I would love for you, put it in layman's terms, put it in Hansen terms, cheating the camera a little bit more. That's one of the better chapters. Well, it's all good, but that's one of the chapters that really stood out on me. Can you break down cheating the camera?
Sure, sure. So cheating for the camera is a very common expression that's used on film sets, TV sets, which means understanding that your audience, if they were live, they would be seeing a different view of you, right? It's not the same view when you're just straight on and in the camera shot. So cheating for the camera means you have to adapt uh, to make sure your audience gets the best view of you as possible, that makes it seem as real as possible. So, for instance, in the movies, you'll notice if you ever see actors talking to each other in a scene, they are usually so close to each other. And I've been in these
Right.
scenes because they're in this tight shot. They are much closer together than they would ever talk in real life. And they actually call those mouthwash shots because it's like, I hope the
You're
other
so
actor
intimate.
leaves
You're
their
so,
mouthwash.
yeah, right.
Right? So that's very unnatural, but they do it because the audience perceives it as just two people talking normally face to face. And so we don't have a good understanding, or most people don't have a good understanding yet of how the camera distorts certain behaviors and how we have to adapt for this screen so that our audience gets the best and fullest possible experience. I would say, we're like an iceberg. We're
Mhm.
like the tip of the iceberg here because our audience sees 20% of us, maybe 15 to 20% of us. So the 80% of our body language, the context that we bring when we're in person, the energy is gone. So you have to think about, what is this 20% communicating? And that is, that's your virtual stage. And you have to be very intentional about what goes in that stage to make sure your audience gets the right message and perception of you and your offering.
Well, in that, it's like the 20%, the iceberg analogy, tight fit. Because if I'm
Mhm.
speaking to you face to face, I could be looking down at my shoelaces. I could be looking left, right, and that sends all. We can get into nonverbal in a second, but that sends a whole other message. But you got that tight frame in the video, and you raised your hands. I'm a hand guy, but and you even think about simple as if I put my hand close to the camera, it looks like I've got monster hands right now. That's a
Right,
bad
right.
visual, but you have to be aware of what's in that 20% of of framing shot. And that's, and you can use that to your advantage or disadvantage if you're not aware of it.
Absolutely. And many times people aren't realizing that they are shooting themselves in the foot with all this distracting behavior that doesn't support what they're saying, doesn't doesn't do anything to build a relationship. In fact, it plants these seeds of doubts in our customer's mind. I mean, think about it. If like you said, if you were sitting across the table from someone and you were pouring your heart out, Doug, to me, and I was looking down at my phone, you'd think, gee, she doesn't seem that interested, right? She'd be a little
Yeah.
offended. And yet we do that all the time on video, on virtual calls, because we're staring so intently at the screen, telling ourselves, well, surely they know that I'm looking at their image and I need to see them. Well, it doesn't feel that way, because if the camera doesn't see it, it didn't happen, right? And the camera's your customer's eyes. And so unlike in person where if you look down, I might know that you're just looking at my desk.
And then you would probably look down and give them that
Yeah,
modeling thing. And we can, you would throw a little nonverbal gesture back at them to
right.
maybe bring them in, or, hey, just, what I'm, hey, I'm here.
Right. But nobody has any context when you're on video. All we know is if you're connected with me through eye contact through the camera, or you're disconnected. Right. And so being aware of that and being aware of when it really matters, when it's really vital to make eye contact, and when it's okay to look away and, do those micro check-ins with your audience is a really important skill to develop.
I love what you said about micro check-ins. Okay, we've talked about one-to-one, one-to-many.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you use the phrase, and I'm probably little liberties here, setting the stage for the call.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on a call, let's say it's 10 people and you're presenting, you do a lot of pre-call research in the sense that, okay, I'm going to engage these 10 people. And I know that Bob doesn't have his camera on and Sally's just not going to pay attention. You may know that, or you'll know that in the flow. So what are some I know, get the book, read the book, but some strategies for setting the stage so the engagement level is a little bit more accurate?
So that's a great question. There's a lot of parts in that. So let me take a piece of that at a time. When you have a lot of people on a call, the tendency is to try to talk to everyone by looking around your screen, because we feel like, that's how we connect with people. But we have to remember that everyone is having their own personal experience with us through the camera. So if we are talking to the camera, we are talking to each person, but we are talking to each person individually. They're all going to feel like you're talking to them. So you don't have to look over here to talk to Bob and look over there to talk to Sherry. You can maintain that connection. Now, when people aren't on camera, that's always nerve-wracking for salespeople. And it's really as close to acting as you're going to get, because when someone isn't on camera and you are just in front of the camera and you have to have this conversation, and you have to feel like the other person is there. And what happens is when we can't see someone, we often go to the worst possible place. Like they're bored, they're not interested, we get nervous, we start to rush, we don't pause because we're afraid of that silence, and it just creates this self-fulfilling prophecy. Right. So as an actor, you learn how to, visualize the other person in the camera and understand that there is someone there. They're just because you can't see them doesn't mean they're not reacting to you. They're not perhaps, shaking their head or smiling or thinking about what you said. And so you have to develop that trust and that confidence that people are there, and that brings out the best in you. So it's really an art form to learn how to do that and to gain that confidence. But that's what allows you to be present with your audience. Because if you're up in your head going, oh, Sally looks bored and I can't see Bob, and you're not in the moment, you tend to be come across as flustered or distracted. Right. And it doesn't produce good results.
Well, being in the moment, and I loved how you say you can't just address everybody, because then you have the darting head, Sally, right. Bob, Steve. Okay.
Right. All right.
You can call people out verbally. We can talk about verbal and non-gestures and stuff, but you said something about interpretation. You don't want to interpretate a bad read on camera of somebody else because you might miss. Face to face is different. You have a little bit more going on. You have a little bit more. You can see the whole iceberg, right? But
Right,
here
right.
you can't. And I think you were alluding to another great chapter, another great acting term, act as if.
Mm, yes.
And that's
So,
just, and if I think I understand, is just being present in the moment and just let it go, not block out distractions and
well,
elaborate
it's
on that because I'm interpreting it probably wrong. So
no, no, I mean, that's certainly part of it. It's acting as if you can see that person, acting
okay,
as if they are not only can you see them, but what when you say something, we have this communication loop that we are used to when we're in person. We say something, the other person reacts. Now that reaction may be nonverbal, right? It might be a smile, it might be or it might be they might actually say something, but we get a reaction and then that feeds us. That gives us the energy to continue. Well, when someone isn't on camera, we don't get those nonverbal reactions, right? We don't, and oftentimes when they are on camera, we don't get those nonverbal reactions because we can't hear the small, oh, you can't, those
you
are
can't.
often lost on
Yeah, the
video.
verbal or
Right.
hearing.
But we
Yes.
the oftentimes we miss the nonverbal too, and so we're just completely, we've cut that communication loop off, and so we're just sort of left hanging. So you have to fill in that communication loop to have a natural conversation, and that's what actors do. It's like, I say something, if I can't see you, I imagine you going, "Huh, that's interesting." Yeah, so anyway, Doug, well, also what we're gonna do, and that feeds me and gives me the right energy and confidence to move forward. And
Um,
that's the acting as if cycle that really helps get through that loop of like, I can't see anyone, or I'm recording a video and so there isn't anyone to see. But we still have to see someone because the camera knows if you're talking to, dead air or you're actually talking to someone. It feels very different.
this is so go because right now, and if you're watching this or listening to what Julie just said, this is just more what I call visual credibility, or what she calls. She's been in the acting stage and understands this because I'm not getting this from a lot of virtual sales trainers out there about acting as if, being present in the moment, being able to even visualize a positive mental thing when you're presenting. I say blocking it out. You're present, but you're also you're not letting that get into your presentation style, and
Right,
that's
right.
something that's a difference maker. What Julie, I'm just complimentary what you bring to the
Thank you.
table. That uh, somebody who just started doing virtual selling video training started 2 years ago because we had this thing called the pandemic. That's
Right,
just
right.
kudos. That's the type of stuff you're going to get out of this book, as I tell you. But I love that. I love that being present in the moment, knowing your audience, and then you mentioned those nonverbal cues, voice inflections. I'm fascinated about that. It's more than just looking me in the eye. It's so much. It's like taking that face-to-face presentation online, but there's so many other skills that you got to do.
And right, and that's why in order to be present, and we have to develop that muscle memory in terms of connecting through the camera. Finding that skill to look at the camera and visualize someone being there and having a conversation. How to use our body, how to read body language when we're looking at the camera. We have to hone those skills because you can't possibly be in the moment if you're on a call and you're thinking, oh, I gotta am I in frame? Okay, I gotta look at the camera now. All right.
I
Oh, I'm
love
not
that.
looking at
It's
the camera.
just you want it to be
Right.
secondhand nature,
Yeah,
like you're driving a car. You
exactly. You're not present if you are practicing these skills on your customer, right? And that's a very costly way to practice.
no, it's like prospecting about having some practice runs, or we can put the sales dichotomy in there. So I
Right.
love that but developing that muscle memory and developing that skill set. How do they do that? I think I know the answer to this. You got to practice, and you got to practice. And you use the term, I love it, from a director's perspective. I got another term for that, which I'll share, called social watching. But
Hmm.
that's the last chapter of the book that really stood out to me is practice, director's perspective.
Well,
You
and right, and
talk about
practice.
it.
So, well, practice correctly because again, right now a lot of people are just practicing and
Hmm.
reinforcing things that don't work. They don't serve you. They don't serve your customer. So make sure you're practicing the right techniques. Get a good, a guide in that aspect. And then, the director's perspective is really about to get better as you practice, you're going to have to watch your own video, right? You're going to have to
Right.
actually understand how the audience perceives you on their screen. And it's a very difficult thing to do. Even as an actor, I just hated watching myself on film or TV. I'd have to watch it with, one eye closed or a glass of wine or something, because we're looking for things that often don't matter. Like we go right to, oh, what's going on with my hair, or why does my eyebrow do that thing? And that's not what we need to be looking for. That
Okay.
and we go, or we just dismiss it and go, oh, I'm terrible, and we don't even know where to start to fix things. So a director looks for, very objectively, what works, what doesn't work, and for the audience. It's not about you. It's not personal, right? It's just what is taking the audience out of the moment, what is distracting them from your true intention or what you're trying to say, and how can we improve our connection with the audience. So having a good way to evaluate yourself is really important to keep you from going down this path of like, oh, I need to do this, I don't like how I look, I don't like how I sound. Looking for, how much eye contact did I make? Did I make it at these key points when it matters? Was my body language supporting what I was saying? Was it in frame? Was it slow and purposeful, or fast and distracting? So and those are the tools that, I offer in the book and in my Selling on Video Masterclass to help people really stay on track and actually get better and not just beat themselves up, which is the temptation when you watch
Sure.
yourself on video.
And I love that, but you're actually leveraging what visual learning. You can hone in on, the other nonverbal gestures or voice inflection and other skills. And you can keep adding layers and layers just to be a better presenter. But at the end of the day, your book's more than just about presentation. It's about, well, you have great presentations. I'm going to get into the sales area. You want to build those relationships, have those better presentations. So, well, simply close more deals. And I mean, the title, use video to build relationships. Because I mean, that's the entry level, but it's the starting point. Same you do face to face.
Well, look, you're not going to close a deal if you don't get that first call, if you don't make it to the demo, if you don't move forward in the process. And that means they have to find you credible and
Mhm.
confident and likable, and delivering meaningful information in a way that they can consume without distracting them and making them doubt does he really, know what he's talking about?
Right.
So we have to eliminate those things that obviously crush our credibility, right? And create any doubts or distractions in our customers' minds. So we have to make it easy for them to go, yeah, I really, I really trust Doug. I feel, like I'm in good hands, and we aren't so susceptible to a close competitor just coming in with a better price, right?
Right. And it's whether it's visual credibility, visual social proof, but the trust and authenticity of coming through on camera.
Right.
Flip it up a little bit. Acting, okay, the theatrics. There's a point where you can be real and authentic, which you want to be to build those relationships. Obviously, you don't want to come off fake and not who you are. But we pound the word acting. Maybe the over top theatrics. I'm an actor. There's know your audience. I'm sure I don't know if you've ever gotten pushback on that, but what can an actress
Oh,
or an
sure.
actor tell me, because I'm Joe sales guy, and obviously you've got the pedigree for that, but just as this is kind of more an open-ended question, more of an exploratory thing. The point is, got to be present in the moment and know your audience. I guess that's the answer. I answered my own question. Maybe I'll let you answer
Yeah.
it.
No, that's a fair question. Absolutely. Well, first of all, the best actors are always bringing themselves to the role. They're not necessarily turning into a different person. They're
Sure.
imagining themselves in imaginary circumstances. So it's very real process, and that's what I loved about acting, was much of the psychology about it. It's like, how would I feel if this were happening? And really, hearing the other actors in the moment and responding to that in the moment. It's we see acting today that is, incredible. If you compared it to 50 years ago, where there was a lot of like
Sure.
theatrics going on, but that doesn't work on camera. because the camera, the camera is a lie detector. So
Mhm.
if you don't absolutely believe what you're saying, how you feel about it will come out, right? So you have to be very congruent with who you are and what your message is. And so that takes some work sometimes to get in that place where you feel confident and uh, your intentions are clear, because we've got all distractions, and that's the problem. Is if we show up and we're not in a good place, or we're distracted, our audience reads that, because the camera takes that in. It reads how you feel. Now, your audience may not know, oh, she's just distracted. They just know something's off, right? Or
Sure.
and we don't want to plant those seeds. So it is very much about being authentic, but it's about adapting your authentic self for this medium. And that's where, people start to go, oh, no, I don't want to not be myself. Well, listen, when you're presenting face to face, if, do you remember presenting live and you'd have the screen behind you?
Mhm.
And when you
Yes.
stood, wouldn't you often like position your body awkwardly so that they could see your face and you could point at the screen like Vanna White in The Price is Right?
Right,
You
turn
know,
some letters and I get it. Yeah.
right? We do all these adjustments in person for the benefit of our audience. It's nothing different on video. It's just the adjustments are different. And so we learn new ways to adapt to this environment. That's all it is. We want to be real, but we want to be the best version of ourselves that reads well on camera. And where I get kind of stern with people is when they're like, well, I just want to be myself. And they're sitting back in their chair and they're just, this is me. And it's like, well, that's great. But you know what that looks like? It looks like they're
Resting
not,
business face
yeah,
and
they're
yeah,
like, right. They got
serious.
resting business face. They're low energy. They look like they're not interested. They sound like they're not interested. Um, and that it just doesn't read well at the camera. I want to see the you that is at your best. It's the you sitting across from someone you're interested in and you can't wait to hear what they have to say. That's still you. It's just a different version of you. I don't want the you that's on the couch, channel surfing.
I love that, and there's so much to unpack what you said there, and it's just like being real and being authentic. Just keep it 100. Here's a non-verbal gesture over here, or a prop, but the point is being authentic, but the version of you that will transcend trust and credibility to your audience.
Mhm.
Being real, being authentic. I just want to touch on backgrounds because backgrounds are very. You're just setting the table. When you're in a face-to-face meeting, it might be different. You might not be able to control the scenery or nature behind you as much, but you show up, you're present. I use green screen. Sometimes I don't, but it's always going to be from a personal branding perspective. What are your thoughts on that? Briefly, I know that's kind of a loaded question, but just
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And so my thoughts are this. If at all possible, I encourage people to use a natural background. And here's why, especially in sales. When in your previous career, if you've been in sales for a while, if you thought, gosh, I wish I could have a more, personal relationship with my customer. I wish they could see me as a real person and not just a vendor coming in their door. Well, here you are. You have the opportunity to have the customer in your home and see you as a real person by being on camera and sharing your space. That's a great opportunity, right? It can be an icebreaker. It can also it humanizes us. So certainly there's cases where salespeople aren't, able to, share their background, and they've got kids, they've got, construction going on. That's fine. But the goal, I believe, for video to really connect with other people is to create as much of a in-person experience as possible, because that's how we're used to connecting, and that's how I feel like you're a real person. And so part of that creating an in-person experience is not having a spaceship behind me or a tiger about to jump on
the
me that
Golden Gate Bridge.
yeah, it reinforces the artificiality of this environment, and I don't think we need to reinforce that any more than is already apparent.
And I think you need from a standpoint of setting the stage. People, you want the focus to be on your face and you, not the distractions behind you.
Right.
Now, I'll take it a step further. If I'm branding with a company and I've got the green screen, I want to light it right, and I've got their logo in the background, it's business specific. There's a different approach because I'm trying to engage them and show that. At the same time, the emphasis should be on them and what you transcend. And I just read a post I think you did on LinkedIn, one of the many. You talked about starting a call or starting a visual call,
Mhm.
and do you go to camera first? Do you go to the direct? And and I commented on this one. It was just, you got a lot of nuggets out there on LinkedIn. So if you
Oh,
don't get the book, follow LinkedIn, follow Julie. But you talked about, I want to start the conversation being on camera. I can put the deck in the background, but you're setting the table with that.
right. I mean, the goal in the first few, the first minute of a presentation is to connect with your audience, is to grab their attention, make them feel like you're just having a conversation. And it's hard to do if you are just a tiny little, a tiny little picture up in the corner of their screen. It's hard to connect with you when you're that
Mhm.
small. So most of the time we use slides like the title slide has 3 to 5 words on it, your name, their logo, and we spend 30 seconds there talking, and we're this little uh, picture up in the corner. That is a waste of valuable real estate, right? Because we have to rethink our slides. That's a a space saver for the most part. What is the value of that? The value is better spent having you talk to the customer, connect with them, and before just jumping into these slides that don't offer any value.
I love that. And I mean, you unpack that in the book and a ton of topics. I mean, I'm just looking, if you go to the contents page, this is a tactical and practical book of real life experiences, but we're always evolving. You wrote this book back in September. Uh,
Mhm.
is there anything maybe you would have put in the book? Because you're always putting new content. Obviously, you've got your training classes and you're always developing a true craftswoman of the trade. You're always developing new talents and you're learning new things. But is there anything you wish you would have put in the book, or is that just an ongoing process? You've written three
Uh,
books.
yeah, it was hard to know where to stop. I finally had to stop
Okay.
just because I got to get this out, right?
Okay.
Because people are bugging me about it, and I would have put more in about recording videos and prospecting because there are some things that are unique to that experience, and that's a big area that I work with sales teams on now because um, recording a video is as close to acting as most people will ever get. Right?
Right.
There is no one there. So you got to bring it, and you really got to use that act as if and visualize and recreate that communication loop, or they will just be wooden and flat. And I see so many videos that I think, oh, I wish I could help that person because they got a good message, but it's just really wooden. And I can tell they don't think they're talking to anybody. Nobody's out there. And God, I hope somebody's watching this. Right. And
And that
it's just a
whole
waste.
whole leveraging pre-recorded content. And we spoke
Mhm.
most of this conversation on, synchronous live and direct
Right.
stuff. Any special project? I mean, you've got the ongoing classes. Anything else that you'd like to share for audience? And we're going to put the links up. And anything that you would like to kind of like your parting shot, or if you got some questions for me, the floor is yours. You are now the interviewer.
Wow. Okay. Well, how about that? Yeah, I would just say right now and I work on things that I hear from my customers they're in need of. And right now, a couple of the things are virtual credibility and virtual executive presence.
Sure.
So it's for upcoming leaders, even salespeople. If you're gonna meet with the C-suite, you have to have a certain level of executive presence, and you certainly have to come across very credible. And those qualities are conveyed differently and perceived differently on video than they are in person. So working with teams on how to build those skills. But yeah, that's there's a trust building guide I put together that folks are welcome to check out on my site, juliehansen.live/trust,
Okay.
with sort of the top 10 trust building behaviors on video. And that's a great place to start. But Doug, I know you have been using video for a long time, and I would love to hear what really, was there any tips in the book that were a real aha for you? Because I know
I,
you're a
yeah.
professional.
Oh, first of all, and thank you for the kind words, but the point, what I got out of is really the nonverbal and voice inflections, and it comes from being on stage, but being able to read your audience. Because I'm so focused, because I do a lot of video direct, pre-recorded, direct, and is my tie crooked? I mean, what if that person's not engaged? So that
Right.
whole thing about it's two sides of the camera, but it's more because you've got the other framing. So that stood out on me. I mean, there were the chapters on that. It's what the camera sees, not necessarily you, but what you see in the camera. Being able to monitor,
Mm.
not dart your eyes. Those are some of the takeaways. The warm up exercises,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
anything. And I learned a new technique the other day. Um, Getting your voice, instead of like people want to clear their throats or swallow a lot of water. Well, water's good, but instead of clearing your throat, that's not as good as for your larynx as saying words like zoom, moon, or double vowels. That's a warm up thing. You've probably heard that, but that's something I didn't know about because I'm always clearing my throat. But I'm constant
Yeah.
professional on how to do this. In fact, I'm glad you asked it because I do a lot of video, but I do what's called social watching. I over evaluate. Sometimes I over criticize what I do, but I want to get better.
Mm.
So getting better would be reading this book. And that's some of the takeaways. We didn't really hone in on technology. I geeked out on technology. I can do 3 camera screens and all that. What type of mic? If my message stinks or doesn't resonate, or I'm not building a relationship, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing, what kind of mic I'm doing, how
Right,
it's lit. I mean, we didn't even cover lighting.
right,
We didn't cover video
right,
101. It's in
right.
the book. It's in the book.
It's a book,
So
and there's lots of resources on that, and really that is the foundation, and everybody should have a good foundation in the
sure.
technology, in the setup by now, or be close to good. Nobody should be using their in laptop camera. You should have a quality camera. I mean, just the basics need to be met. But guess what? Everybody has good basics now. I won't say everybody because it's
S- uh,
surprising that people don't.
Sure.
But
Sure. We can go. We can take
um,
it there. But I hear what you're saying. I
yeah, but
totally
you should
100%.
have the basics by now, and this is where we're headed. And either you need to get on board and raise your level, or you're gonna get left behind by people who do know how to communicate well on video, and that's really the bottom line.
I think, from your book, being how to communicate and build those relationships. Yeah, I learned a lot from that. But watching your video content and getting to know you through different sales organizations, I've learned a lot from your short video clips, because my thing now is I can light it, shoot it, edit it, whatever. I'm been doing that. It's what I get paid to do. But now it's being better in the moment, being a better interviewer, learning when to shut up and listen and not be so preoccupied in your next question. I mean, this is a perfect example. I'll go back, review the game tape. Of course, I'm going to edit it. I'm going to add graphics, but what could I have done better? But
Sure.
hearing your voice inflections, how you talk, how you gather, it's not like, you just started doing video. So, I mean, yeah, I learned a lot from the book, but I've learned a lot from you over the last decade, and I continue to do so. And I think we in sales and our profession and anything in business, we're learning a lot over the last couple of years. And it's beyond lighting, the right web camera, and it's being in that moment. That's my
Yep.
biggest takeaway right now.
Hmm.
And I think acting, improv skills, all that stuff comes into play. Builds that muscle memory so you can do it in autopilot.
Absolutely. That's the bottom line. It's a fire hose of new information coming at us these last couple of years, and new skills. It's not easy, but if you invest the time and get the right resources to help you get to that next level, and eventually you won't have to think about it as much.
Right.
And that's the
Anything
goal.
else you want to add before we wrap this up?
I would just say it doesn't have to be as hard as we're making it, right? There's a
Right.
whole industry, actors and directors and on-camera professionals have been perfecting the craft of connecting through the camera for decades, right? And so avail yourself of this knowledge. You don't have to figure it out yourself. You don't have to wonder if you could do it better. Just go to the experts and get some guidance, and it'll make you more comfortable and confident on camera, and it'll come across to your customers, and it'll help you in those close deals, win those deals that you should win.
I love it. And I love this book. I want to thank our guest, Julie. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
And if you're,
you.
yeah, thank you. And definitely check out her online material, her books, her content. It's immaculate and it's always evolving. And the premise from this interview, we're always learning and we're visual learners. Check out what Julie's putting out. And I want to thank our audience today. In layman's terms, leveraging video for better sales conversations, keeping it social with video.